Mount Everest stands taller than anything else on Earth, both in height and in legend. For decades, climbers from around the world have risked everything to stand at its summit, chasing the feeling of conquering the impossible. But this mountain does not care about your training, your gear, or your dreams. It's not a place of mercy. When conditions shift, when mistakes are made, when nature turns ruthless, Everest becomes a silent killer. For some, Everest means glory. For others, it's where their story ends, not with a fall, not with a scream, but with a storm, a crack in the ice, or the slow, invisible failure of the human body in the death zone. The summit may be the goal, but the mountain always has the final say. In this video, we're taking you into the heart of Everest's darkest moments. These are the 3 deadliest days ever recorded on the world's highest peak, when ambition, nature, and tragedy collided in ways no one saw coming. Before I tell you about the 3 deadliest days on Everest, I would like to say, I'm a small channel sharing these incredible and often tragic stories from the world's highest peaks. If you're enjoying this video, please consider hitting that subscribe button and giving this video a like. It might seem small, but it helps a lot on the road to my first 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. And now, let's go back to the darkest days Everest has ever seen. Let me take you back to April 25th, 2015. It began like any other morning at Everest Base Camp. Climbers were checking gear, melting snow for tea, or staring up at the towering white pyramid above them, thinking about their next push. The skies were clear, the winds calm. No one had any reason to suspect that everything was about to change in seconds. At 11:56 a.m. local time, the ground began to tremble. What started as a low vibration quickly became a violent, earth-shattering quake. All across Nepal, buildings collapsed, roads split open, entire villages were leveled. And on Everest, the shaking triggered something far more immediate. A massive slab of ice broke loose from the slopes of nearby Pumori. Within moments, a wall of snow and rock roared down the mountain toward base camp. There was no warning, no time to run. Some climbers said it sounded like a freight train or a jet engine coming straight at them. Others never heard a thing. The avalanche struck with unimaginable force. Tents were ripped from the ground and hurled into the air. People were buried instantly. Others were crushed by flying debris or suffocated under the snow. When the cloud finally cleared, the view was apocalyptic. Gear scattered across the ice, bodies half buried, and a deadly silence hanging in the thin air. 19 people were killed that day, making it the deadliest incident in Everest's history. More than 60 others were injured. Survivors described digging through snow and rubble with their bare hands, looking for friends and teammates. Helicopters had to land on the glacier to airlift the wounded. Climbers who had trained for years to summit the world's tallest mountain were suddenly just trying to stay alive at its base. April 25th, 2015, reminded the world that Everest doesn't need a blizzard or a fall to take lives. Sometimes all it takes is the Earth itself to shift, just a little. 1 year before the earthquake, the mountain had already delivered a brutal warning. It didn't come in the form of a quake or a storm. It came in silence early in the morning when most climbers were still waking up. And this time, it wasn't tourists or foreign climbers who paid the price. It was the men who make Everest possible. The Sherpas. April 18th, 2014. Just after dawn, a group of Sherpa guides were moving through the Khumbu Icefall, a dangerous stretch of the climb filled with massive ice towers, crevasses, and unstable terrain. It's often called the most treacherous section on the way to the summit, and for good reason. Every climber must pass through it, but it's the Sherpas who go first, fixing ropes, carrying gear, and carving a path for the paying clients who come later. That morning, as the team crossed the icefall, a towering block of ice, larger than a building, suddenly broke loose from the western shoulder of Everest. No one had time to react. In a matter of seconds, it crashed down onto the route, burying the Sherpas beneath thousands of tons of snow and shattered ice. 16 men were killed. For Nepal, for the Sherpa community, And for the entire mountaineering world, it was a devastating blow. These weren't amateurs or thrill seekers. These were professionals, fathers, sons, men who had spent their lives guiding others to the summit and back again. And in one cold moment, they were gone. The 2014 climbing season was effectively canceled. For the first time in decades, the mountain was silent in peak season. No summit attempts, no victory photos, just grief. This wasn't just a tragedy, it was a reckoning. Everest had taken its most essential people, and it forced the world to confront a truth too often ignored, that the Sherpas carry not just the loads, but the risks, the danger, and too often, the cost. The avalanche in 2015 was raw power. The icefall collapse in 2014 was cruel precision. But nearly 2 decades earlier, Everest delivered a different kind of death. One slow, chaotic, and painfully human. It was a disaster born not from a single event, but from small decisions that built into catastrophe. And it became the most infamous tragedy in Everest's modern history. May 10th, 1996. 2 major commercial expeditions, one led by Rob Hall of Adventure Consultants, and another by Scott Fisher of Mountain Madness, set out to summit Everest during a narrow weather window. Dozens of climbers from around the world were pushing for the top, many of them less experienced, relying on their guides to get them safely up and down. The morning started with clear skies, but problems mounted early. Crowding slowed the ascent. Ropes weren't fixed in time. Some climbers reached the summit hours later than planned, leaving little margin for descent before nightfall. Oxygen was running low. The weather was beginning to turn. Then the storm hit. What followed was chaos in the death zone, where oxygen is so thin, the human body begins to shut down. Winds screamed across the ridge. Visibility dropped to 0. Temperatures plunged below -40. Climbers became disoriented, separated from their teams. Some turned around. Others pushed on, too exhausted or too stubborn to stop. By the end of the next day, 8 people were dead. The 1996 tragedy shocked the world. It was the first Everest disaster captured in real time, with satellite phones, news crews, and survivors sharing their stories soon after. It became the subject of books, documentaries, and eventually a Hollywood film. But beyond the headlines, the 1996 disaster exposed something deeper: the growing commercialization of Everest. Too many climbers, not enough oversight, and a dangerous assumption that money could buy safety on the most dangerous mountain in the world. These were not just the deadliest days on Everest. They were reminders. Reminders that no summit, no dream, no flag at the top is ever guaranteed. That even in the age of modern gear, GPS, and guided tours, the mountain still writes the final chapter. For some, Everest is a symbol of what humans can achieve. For others, it's the place where husbands, wives, parents, and friends never came home. The earthquake, the ice fall, the storm, different causes, same outcome, lives lost, lessons paid in full. But every season, more climbers return, chasing the same peak, standing where others once fell. Because that's what Everest does. It draws you in with beauty, then tests your soul with silence. Maybe the deadliest days aren't just about death. They're about risk, about respect, about understanding that some places are just bigger than us. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing to my small channel. I love to see you at my next video.